One of the big news that broke yesterday with regards to this summer transfer window is that KALVIN Phillips looks as though he is on his way to Manchester City. As you heard there from Andy Goldstein, £42 million is the fee that has been agreed between the two clubs, with potential bonuses adding up to another £3 million, so making it £45 million in total. Oh, goodness me. Where do we start with this one? You can talk about the fee. You can talk about the fact that he's moving to Manchester City, Cass. First of all, let's talk about the fact that he's going to be a Manchester City player. Do you see him fitting into that City team with ease?
Well, he'll probably play second fiddle to Rodri.
Okay.
I think, because he had an outstanding season. And Pep doesn't like to play two holding midfielders who are basically, spoilers and keep the ball brilliantly well, and KALVIN Phillips does that. So maybe you could debate, has KALVIN Phillips made the right decision to go to City? And you're never guaranteed. Look, Pep's selection, how many players at City are really guaranteed? I think you'd probably go Ederson, the keeper, Diaz, De Bruyne, maybe Bernardo Silva, Walker, yes. Cancelo, yeah. I mean, it's really, really hard to second guess his best 11, but especially in forward areas. But the holding midfield role, I think, will still be Rodri for quite long periods of the season. I thought it was quite cheap. Now,
yeah,
he's had an injury-plagued season, which is, if you go back last summer, I think someone would have quite openly paid 60+ million for KALVIN Phillips, but he's been injured most of the season. But they're getting a really quality, good, you can trust KALVIN Phillips to do a great job for you. And I think that's the big thing. But if you used to say Declan Rice and KALVIN Phillips, who played in the England midfield last summer in the Euros and did brilliantly well between the pair of them, one club's talking in West Ham 150 million and he's just gone for 42. Now, I do think there is a bit more in Declan Rice. I think he's a player that can play more than one position and also can, do a little bit. I think it's a little bit quicker than KALVIN Phillips, but there's not a great deal between them. Is there really over £100 million difference in between the valuations? No, I don't.
When you say it like that, it is very, very cheap that Manchester City are getting KALVIN Phillips in on. And when you consider last summer when they spent, 100 million on Jack Grealish?
Yeah.
Especially for England players, there is an overpricing of England players. So for them to be getting KALVIN Phillips, as we say, for 42 up to 45 million, it's a bit of a steal. But like you say, I mean, Rodri is the same age. They're both 26. You just sort of think, you're going to have a battle on your hands here, KALVIN Phillips, because at Leeds, he's one of those that's guaranteed to start pretty much every game when fit. It's not the same. And as Jack Grealish has found.
Well, it's exactly the same scenario. Jack Grealish, when he was fit, played every game at Aston Villa. When KALVIN Phillips was fit at Leeds, he played every game. Yeah. Now he's going to a club. Nathan Ake played loads of games, for Bournemouth and goes to Man City and has been a bit part player. And when he's played all right. He's done well. He's in a quality team. Now, I understand also that big football clubs, that you have competition all the time. That is part of being at a big football club, that you might have someone with 40 caps alongside you trying to battle for one position, 40, 50 caps. So that's just the environment that a big club has. I'm not sure. Now, I don't know why Man United have not made a move on KALVIN Phillips. Now, they might say, well, we tried to and he'd already decided he was going to City. But he is exactly what Man United need, for me.
But as a Leeds boy through and through, could it possibly be that he's gone,
Maybe.
I could never cross that divide?
Yeah, well, I did say in the last segment, I don't want players that don't want to play for me or play for a certain club. He might not have wanted to go there. That might be the reason. But there wasn't seemingly any competition from a club that I think sorely need that type of player. I think it's a huge miss in their team. A ball-winning player that can keep it and let other players do their thing, and he does that as well as anybody. And look, we've seen Bazuma go to Tottenham for a relatively low fee in 25 million. Yeah. Now, OK, he had a year left in his contract, so slightly different circumstances, but players without great numbers of stats of goals and assists, their fees aren't quite as big, are they? We're looking. The only one is Declan Rice. Declan Rice doesn't have great stats as in goals and assists, but everyone can watch him and go, well, his disruption of teams and how he affects them by his performance. But I think KALVIN Phillips does that. But he's just gone to a side that have probably got, I would say, last year, the best holding midfield player in the country was Rodri. Above Declan Rice.
So
I think he played better. Okay, he was in a title-winning team. But I think he's gone to the challenge, the number one in the country at that position.
Manchester City's Fernandinho obviously has left now, hasn't he, the club? So you could look at it as Phillips as the replacement for him. But like you say, it was Rodri that was playing more often than Fernandinho was. And admittedly, Fernandinho is a lot older and was coming to the end of his time there at Manchester City. So how do you go about then going from a club where you have been number one for as long as you've been playing in that team pretty much, to suddenly having to adjust to a different way where you're not guaranteed to be playing every game? How do you think some players cope with that? Is that going to be all down to Pep and his man management and making sure that someone like Kalvin Phillips knows that you are so appreciated, even though you're competing with someone who's of the same age? Well,
the luxuries are that you can go to a bigger club and obviously sign for a big fee and then get a huge pay rise.
Yeah.
So initially, you're quite delighted that your contract is pretty enormous and you're getting paid now a level of the highest earners in the country, and then that wears off. Then you get frustrated about sitting out the team, which is your next problem. Because if Kalvin Phillips find himself, he'll play games at City because there's enough competitions for them to be in, but he won't be number one. He won't be a shoehorn in that team, whether you're just going to play week in, week out, which might frustrate him. Because some players... Don't tell me Jack Grealish hasn't got frustrated this season, because he quite clearly has. It would be a frustration to be in and out of a team when you're a £100 million player that played every week at Aston Villa. So, it's a tricky one.
With the World Cup coming up, is this a bit of a risky move for Phillips?
Good question. I just think it will come down to number of games he plays before the World Cup, because Bellingham's on his heels as a player. Declan Rice is definitely going to play. So he will know that he's going to have to play enough games. He'll make the squad without a doubt. But will he start? Last summer, he was at Leeds and he was playing in the Euros.
Yeah.
So in a year's, after a year and a half's time, he could be not a certain starter for England. So that's a consequence of how things have changed for him. It's club level. Yes, I've gone into a club that's challenging to win the title and, going to be competing for the highest earners. But I might lose my England place in the meantime. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. And actually, maybe he'll be speaking a lot to Jack Grealish about how he's dealt with the complete change of being your main man in a team, for example. And Kalvin Phillips would be a similar kind of player when Leeds fans would look at their team and go, got to have... When Phillips isn't playing, when he was injured, it was a huge miss. And a lot of Leeds fans were obviously upset that he would be injured and such a key player to be missing in the team. So maybe he will be speaking to Jack Grealish about how you now go from being that main man to suddenly being one of many and hoping to get into that team. And actually, when you look at Jack Grealish, as much as he probably would have loved to have played more for Manchester City this season, he's still enjoying his time. I know you can forget all the fun that he's having in this summer. He's more than entitled to do that. But look at the celebrations when they won the title. He was just enjoying himself.
Well, sometimes you can get in a team by chance sometimes and someone gets injured and you get given a lot more games. That could happen to Phillips. But initially, he's going to start as a number two, which is a strange role for a guy that I think is good. Now, one thing I would say about Kalvin Phillips, I don't know him obviously personally. I think you can tell he's got an incredible character. He's got a real drive in him to be the best he can be. And I think Pep probably loves that and can trust that he can come in and deliver when needed. Look, he'll be battling for a place, and he's a really terrific midfielder to get into your football club. I mean, if you said to me the top three, I would probably put Fabinho in now, and then I'd go, obviously I mentioned Rodri is the number one, Declan Rice, but he's now in the top 6 or 7 in the country in that position, in my opinion, but he might not be the number one at his club.
Yeah.